What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part one of me reviewing and ranking Eric Clapton's live releases, albums, involvement, box sets, all that kind of stuff. A lot of good live stuff. I'm going to do it in parts only because there's a lot of it, and that way I can cover as much as possible without just making a super long, stupid video. I'm going to start with the 70s and 80s. There were, I believe, 6 different significant live albums that Clapton either released himself or were involved with. I talked about one in the collaboration video, but I'm going to return to that for this. Yeah, 6 of them. I'm going to talk about those, and then I will rank them. I will rank them and talk about them, put the list up at the end. Then when we get to the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s, I'll merge the lists together. But yeah, how did we get to Clapton from Frank Zappa? Lots of ways, it turns out. Bruce Fowler was on an album. Jim Gordon, of course, ridiculous drummer. Somebody else on a Don Preston, I think, was on one of Clapton's later albums. Plus God, I See God. So yeah, that's it. All right, let's do it. Let's get on to number 6. Number 6 is Timepieces Volume 2, Live in the 70s. I had to include this, even though it's a greatest hits, kind of, but not completely. Only because what other artists, like literally, it's a question I'm asking, what other artists put out a greatest hits and or a compilation album of previously released live material as a follow-up to their original greatest hits album? It's just an odd choice. This came out in 1983, 8 tracks, 6 of them, I believe, were previously released at the time. 2 of them were not. One of them has since been released. I believe it's the same version. The other one has not, to my knowledge. Interesting track list. Opens up with Tulsa Time. Awesome live number that he was doing in the late 70s. Fantastic. Great fun song. That was previously released on Just One Night, along with Ramblin' on My Mind, Have You Ever Loved a Woman was on Just One Night, along with Blues Power. So those 3 have been previously released. Presence of the Lord from the Derek and the Dominoes in Concert is on here, so odd choice. You have, what else? You have Can't Find My Way Home from EC Was Here. That was previously released on EC Was Here. And then you also have If I Don't Be There by Morning, which was also on Just One Night. So really weird. The 2 stuff that was not previously, 2 tracks that were not previously released when this came out, Knockin' on Heaven's Door, which I've said it once and I've said it many times before. No one should ever cover, ever. The original was perfect. Nobody's ever made it better. They've just dragged it on and made it slower or worse. It was previously unreleased. I still think it's previously unreleased. I also believe it's from the Just One Night tour. So if we ever get an expansive box set of that, maybe that'll be dropped there. And then the other unreleased song at the time was Smile, which I think is the same version, live version from the Give Me Strength. EC Was Here, re-release from 2013, which I'm not going to talk about here, but we'll talk about when I get to the 2010s. So a weird album. Like, I bought it at the time because I was into Clapton and it was released. But yeah, Tulsa Time is great. If I Don't Be There by Morning was great. The Ramble on My Mind, Have You Ever Loved a Woman is fantastic. Almost all of it's fantastic other than the Knocking on Heaven's Door. It's random. It's weird. But yeah, being that everything else is going to be on the albums I'm about to talk about, this is number 6, Timepieces Volume 2. Number 5 is Just One Night. This came out in 1980. A live album of material recorded in late 79. This is a fantastic album. Like, I absolutely enjoy this album. The reason it drops to number 5 for me is because everything else on this album, on this list, is from earlier in the 70s and has a certain amount of grit or rawness or I'm not sure, just like, hey, we're out here just to play music. It's kind of an unpolished feel to some of the earlier stuff, where this is very much Clapton is now this forceful touring entity. And there is something about this album which I think is kind of sterile. I think it's different on the vinyl because the sides, the CD I have, they don't, it wasn't remixed, so the flow of the songs, like you still have fade outs after songs, and so there's this weird disjointed quality to it. And I do think maybe the album would just work better if like it was mixed where the audience noise was continuous, or there weren't these weird edits or all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, once you get past the fact that the album is in a weird way trying to like hurt its own momentum, the playing on this album is fantastic. Also, Clapton, after he left Eric and the Dominoes, I think almost always, not always, but almost always had a second guitarist. And he would give that second guitarist like solos and chances to step up. And on this album, Albert Lee gets a chance to even sing his own song. And yeah, there are times when the second guitarist like steps up and like maybe even steals the spotlight. The Cocaine on here, Albert Lee's solo in Cocaine is just like, oh, okay, yeah. That's why you don't get a solo all the time. That's a pretty fantastic solo. So Albert Lee is even bringing it. The band is really tight. They serve Clapton well, but I don't know if there's any like crazy loose ends that Clapton doesn't know about. It's a very controlled yet incredibly effective performance. The other thing that I think kind of hurts the album, and I almost think this is the way the set lists work, because most of these are this, I think everything's in the right order of the show, is each of the four sides has like an 8-minute blues song that kind of anchors it. And then it's surrounded by lighter, poppier stuff or more like breezy type stuff. And so that also gives it a weird feeling where it's like, okay, a couple lighter stuff, then we know we're going to get a blues stuff. And there's a predictability about it. But once you actually get into the songs themselves, the performances are fantastic. Opens up with Tulsa Time, friggin' great opener, great song, love the energy. Then we get Early in the Morning, the blues song, Lay Down Sally, love the groove, love the solo. This one kind of plays itself out into silence, and it almost feels like a fade out at the end because the audience is not making any noise, and it's not until the band goes completely silent where the audience almost too tepidly applauses. They should be going much crazier than they are because the Lay Down Sally energy is fantastic. Then we get Wonderful Tonight. I don't like Wonderful Tonight. Another reason this album has got to drop. It's got to be penalized for having this song. I don't ever need to hear that song again. Side 2, If I Don't Be There by Morning. And this, I think, is the thing that kind of makes this album great, are these little like shorter, poppier, high energy, more deep cut songs. Tulsa Time, fantastic. If I Don't Be There by Morning, fantastic. All Our Past Times. Danko's not here to sing, but Albert Lee does a pretty good job singing. I'm assuming that's him doing the other vocals on this. Pretty good. Setting Me Up, a Mark Knopfler song that Albert Lee sings. It's great. Those things, and a little bit like the Lay Down Sally, those kind of things are just bringing a little bit of a different energy that I think really help the character of this album and maybe give this album its little more personality. But yeah, If I Don't Be There by Morning is fantastic. We get a Worried Life Blues, All Our Past Times, and After Midnight, which is like the slower, kind of bluesier version. Oh no, this is not the bluesier version. That's one's coming on a different album. This is the incredibly, incredibly high energy, absolutely amazing guitar playing, just shredding type version. Yeah, no, this is a great, the bass playing in this, absolutely incredible. Yeah, no, this is the good version. We get a Double Trouble. Set Me Up is fantastic. Blues Power, nowhere near as kind of dirty and raw and edgy as what I'm going to talk about in a couple albums. This one definitely hits more of like a sustained, just jammy vibe that actually really works and is really good. Just kind of very polished, but at the same time, excellent playing. Rambling on My Mind into Have You Ever Loved a Woman, which is fantastic, always great rambling. Then we get a Cocaine with amazing playing. Albert Lee steps up. And a really fun Further On Up the Road. Nice, loose, jammy intro before we drop into Further On Up the Road. Great solos, a lot of fun. Really, really good. Yeah, closing song. I like this album. It's really good. My complaint is the flow just seems off at times, and I don't need Wonderful Tonight. But it's a good listen, and there are some fantastic solos and some fantastic solos. Some fantastic versions of songs. I just want more eclectic songs. Like maybe drop a couple of the blues jams and throw in some more weird deep cuts. That would have been fantastic. But yeah, that's my number 5, Just One Night. Number 4 is Eric Clapton's Rainbow Concert, a concert that he and a bunch of friends got together to make sure Clapton was doing okay. In the early 70s, he was having personal problems, beating addiction. Townsend is here, Ron Wood, Rick Gregg, Winwood, Capaldi, Garstein, Rebop, great band. Also, some Winwood songs get thrown in here, which are fantastic. You also got some Derek and the Dominoes. Clapton shows essentially became any song he ever performed, except for Cream for a while, were dropped in his set lists. Except Cream is here, so never mind. I take that back. Opens up with the Cream song. The original version was 6 songs. There was a remastered version, which I think is kind of almost the whole show, I think, was released in the 90s. I'm not going to talk about that one now. This is the OG version, the one I got, the one that I didn't have the rest of this for about a decade. And I went and bought this. Took me a while to buy this because the reviews for this were like mediocre, average, like back in the late 70s, early 80s when I was seeking out whatever I could find about albums pre-internet. And I don't get it. Like, were we that spoiled or that like expecting more that something like this, the original 6-song version of this was like, no, this is not this is fantastic. I'll get to that later. I will say this. When you get to the full release version that has like 14 whole songs, has 8 more songs, there are some performances on there where I'm like, no, that one wasn't too inspired. The 6 things on here, yeah, man, yeah. So this is the OG version of the Rainbow Concert. Opens with Badge. The reason I originally bought this album, I had just seen Clapton, I think for like the 3rd time. I don't think he did Badge the first 2 times I saw him. And he did it where he has that coda at the end. They play Badge, awesome little jam in the middle. They go back to the final verse, and then he drops that the coda, and they jam out again. That organ swell comes in. That's not on here. It's just your straightforward Badge. But the solo that Clapton drops in the middle is fantastic. We get to roll it over. Fantastic. Nice chug and rock. Awesome, great groove, great guitar playing, an unreleased track from Derek and the Dominoes. It's been released many times since. Presence of the Lord, played pretty much straightforward. Not as dramatic as it would be on an album I'm about to talk about. Middle jam, just way too short. But it definitely leaves you wanting more. Pearly Queen, Traffic Song, might be the highlight of this album. That second half, which is just like a near chaos jam, the closest Clapton I think has ever gotten to a jam that just might feel like it's going to fall apart or dissolve in a noisy chaos. The energy is fantastic, executed perfectly. After Midnight is this slow, steady, almost mid-tempo blues version, which I don't prefer. Definitely not as bad as that. What was the Miller Lite version that he did in the 80s or whatever that mistake was. But by the time it's over, the guitar playing, the groove that gets set up kind of wins me over. Though at first I'm always like, I'm not sure I'm a fan of this, but it ultimately works. And then Little Wing is just to close out, just the waves and waves of attack. And I'm pretty sure Ron Wood gets a pretty nice, some nice slide playing in here and guitar playing in here, and they kind of go at it. So Ron Wood is representing well. But yeah, that's the original. 6 songs. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic. When I get to the 90s, I'll address the remastered edition, and I will have both of those on the list because I think they're both different experiences. But yeah, that's number 4 for now, Eric Clapton's Rainbow Concert. Number 3 is Delaney and Bonnie's On Tour with Eric Clapton. I talked about this in the collaboration video. This is just a fantastic, high-energy, fun, loose, early rock, Americana, country, whatever that weird, awesome, upbeat, great vibe that Delaney and Bonnie bring to their music. 8 songs. You get a Robert Johnson medley in here. You get a Little Richard medley in here. You get a fantastic version of the Clapton Delaney song Coming Home, which is one of Clapton's best songs. That opening riff is just fire. Get some other Delaney and Bonnie songs. You get a great cover of Dave Mason's Only You Know and I Know. Just a really, really fun, underappreciated, long forgotten. More people need to own this and cherish this and worship this album. Fantastic. They also re-released this in 2010 as a huge box set that I believe were 4 complete shows. Each disc, I think, was its own complete show. I don't think anything was left out. I'm going to talk about that when I get to the 2010s because that is also fantastic. So yeah, trying to figure out how to address all these things, but that's why I'm doing it in separate videos. But yeah, this is a great, great album. If you have not checked this out, track it down, find it, give it a listen. It is fantastic. My number 3, On Tour with Eric Clapton, Delaney, and Bonnie. My number 2 is EC Was Here. Came out in 1975, a bunch of material from 74 and early 75, earlier in the year 75. This one's a hot mess, but I'm going to go with the original version as released on CD. There's an original LP version. There's an original CD version, which is the LP version with 1 track extended by like 3 times. Then there is the Give Me Strength, the 1974 and 75 recordings, not sessions, recordings, which had a bunch of tracks from the EC Was Here shows, but more in the sequence of what an actual show would look like. That came out in 2012, 2013, I think it was 2013. I will do that when I get to the 2010s. Now I'm just going to talk about my number 2 is the original. I'm going to do the CD, even though I have the vinyl. The only thing different is an extended version of a song, I think. But I love this. This is another one where I'm like, why were people not drooling over this when it came out? We were not that spoiled. This is great stuff. I don't know if it just gets better with age because music hasn't, or this kind of stuff just doesn't exist anymore. This is a fantastic album. Opens up with Have You Ever Loved a Woman? And his guitar playing, even before he gets to the very first vocal, is just like essential. And, you know, he's exploring the idea, playing with around, dropping some licks. And then right when he's about to step up and sing, you feel like he's about to step up and sing. The song is like laying that out. All of a sudden he does this weird, like this dark, heavy, low note type thing. Then he comes in and starts the first vocal and continues with this low. The energy in this is so fantastic. I've always thought it was a horrible way to open an album. Nothing on this album is really a good song to open with. Not even, nothing. So I guess considering the songs they chose to release, it's a good opener. Oh, it is such a fantastic version. Just such an amazing version. That's followed by Presence of the Lord, which is really drawn out and played for like the dramatic effect and like leaning in and slowing it down and kind of building up the energy and just drawing it out until we get to the bonant, that awesome middle jam. The jam could always go on longer, always. Clapton should have dropped like a 2-3 minute jam in this. There should have been a highlight of every show. It's a highlight regardless, but it should be a longer highlight. Then on the original album, you get Drift and Blues. On the CD, you get Drift and Blues going into Ramblin' on My Mind, which is interesting because on the original album, you get a Ramblin' on My Mind on side B. So the CD has added a second Ramblin' on My Mind that goes out of an acoustic Drift and Blues. The slide guitar playing on the Ramblin' on My Mind that follows Drift and Blues is awesome. It's heavy. It's kind of dirty. It is so blues gritty, almost nasty. That, give me 2 Ramblin' on My Minds if they're going to be almost completely different versions. Absolutely fantastic. One is from early at 70. They're both from, one's from July 74, the one with the heavy slide. The later one's from London 74. Fantastic version. Side 2, 4th song, Can't Find My Way Home. Yvonne Elliman, let's give her all the props. Absolutely fantastic on this whole album. Then we get the other Ramblin' on My Mind, which is a pretty much straightforward, no slide guitar playing, just awesome blues jam. And then the whole thing closes out with a really, really awesome Further On Up the Road. But that Ramblin' on My Mind is one of those in which he's calling out the key changes as they're going, and he's soloing, he's like, A, and then they shift into A, and he takes off, G, and he's just absolutely fantastic when he does that. Just wonderful. But even without the expanded stuff, even without the stuff that's going to be dropped later on that Give Me Strength stuff, I love this album. The performances are great. Considering what is on the complete show, some of the stuff that was left off, it is an interesting track list, but I guess we'll talk about that later when we get to the 2010s. But yeah, that's my number two. Another underrated live album. EC was here. And number one is Derek and the Dominoes in concert. This came out in 1973, I believe. And when you hear an album that's probably the greatest album you've ever heard, arguably, and you have it on vinyl, and then you buy it on cassette so you can listen to it in your dad's car, and then you buy it on CD when your mom's car gets a CD player, and the only other thing you have from this band is a live album, you learn to love that live album because you just need more Derek and the Dominoes. Really interesting. Handful of Derek and the Dominoes songs, couple that were unreleased at the time. Some Eric Clapton solo songs, some Blind Faith songs. No Duane Allman on this release. But still, you got Gordon, you got Whitlock, you got Radel. The band is fantastic. And this is just, it's like the jam band, guitar-centric version of Clapton. It's loose. There are times like Blues Power. The closing two tracks are Blues Power, kind of into Have You Loved a Woman. There's like a good 2 or 3 minutes of Blues Power where it just seems Clapton is just playing just to keep the momentum going. Just seems like not even soloing. He's just like urging everything on. And it's almost like, why are we doing this for this long? It's just almost seems like we're just like here just to be on stage and jam, and then we're not really doing anything. But you don't care because the energy is fantastic. Gordon's drumming is ridiculous. Radel is always on bass, and every time Whitlock's there with anything, it just works perfectly. But it doesn't make sense. Like the Blues Power, I'm like, okay, this is really just like great energy. But then when it slides right into Have You Loved a Woman, and you're like, oh, yeah, we kind of needed that because then Clapton's going to like wrap things up with some really intense blues playing. So even the times when you can tell Clapton's just up there just going, like Got to Get Better in a Little While, like 13, 14 minutes of that. And it's just like, we solo, we sing vocals, we solo, we have vocals, we sing, we wrap it up. Oh no, there's more soloing. Like these things just go on and on and on. I think the shortest song on here is like Presence of the Lord at like 6.5. And that has an awesome, drops out in the middle of it. Yeah, this is just pure Clapton, early Clapton rock and roll. It's just the band jamming. Clapton's the only soloist, so it's a lot of Clapton soloing. Fantastic. Opens up with Why Does Love Got to Be So Sad? Nothing compares to the studio version of this. And I think they realize that because they open it up with some sort of just like kind of jammy, just kind of like let's warm up before we drop into that dun, 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 dun. Then that bass comes in and it's absolutely fantastic. But it's like they needed that momentum because there's no way they can replicate that, especially without Dwayne's guitar slide coming in. Really good Why Does Love Got to Be So Sad? They kind of play out that coda really well like they do on the album. That's followed by Got to Get Better in a Little While. Absolutely fantastic, ridiculous song. Sun's gonna shine on my guitar someday. Oh, awesome, awesome. We got a Let It Rain. Really nice Let It Rain follows. Do have a drum solo in there per Let It Rain rules, but that's okay. Presence of the Lord, really nice. We get a nice Tell the Truth. Yeah, good Tell the Truth. Pretty solid Tell the Truth. Nice Bottle of Red Wine. That's the shortest song on here, the Bottle of Red Wine. Just a good rave up type, high energy type little song. We get a Roll It Over, I think which was unreleased prior to this. Nice chug and blues song. And then we get that Blues Power into Have You Ever Loved a Woman? Yeah, just great. Great energy. Just a band jamming it away. This is all from, I don't know when this was all recorded. Like 70, Fillmore East 70. There would be another Derek and the Dominoes release later on down the line, but we'll talk about that later. But like, you have to like learn to love this because there was no other Derek and the Dominoes out there. Then we got the Crossroads box sets. We had these unreleased tracks. Things got a little more interesting. But yeah, this was just like a necessary album. You needed this. I don't want to play into the Clapton addiction like thing, but like this is like when you could only have the one album of Layla and other assorted other love songs. Always mix those two up. you just needed more, and like you learned to love it. And I mean, it's a great album, but yeah, that's my number one. Derek and the Dominoes in concert. And that's what those 6 look like in writing. I do have OG, original release, or not OG, just original release after EC was here and Clapton's Rainbow. So I'm going to see when I get to those later releases and they're more fleshed out, see how I feel about those. I'm generally all for more, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. Whether I combine them, whether I bump them, whether I put them in order. We'll see how that goes. I'm interested myself. I don't have a plan for that. And I'm dreading the 90s because we unplug. And I'm not a big fan of unplugged. I've never been a fan of electric artists going acoustic. It's not my thing. Neil Young, Bob Dylan. Recently saw Nick Cave do a piano solo set, which I didn't think I would like, but I was like, I got to go see this. Absolutely loved it. Don't know if I would ever listen to it at home, but live it was fantastic. It's kind of the way I feel about acoustic stuff. So kind of not looking forward to the 90s, but we're gonna do that next. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about these releases, which ones are your favorite. And yeah, we'll get to the massive box set or the expanded versions of these later on. Further on down the road, we'll get to those. All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, do all those kind of things, and go listen to pretty much any of these except for Timepieces. They're all, I think, fantastic, arguably underrated live albums. Yeah. All right. Peace. Talk to you later.